This video has been edited to shorten watch time by removing sidebars, evidence handling, and long pauses. Witness testimony remains intact, with minor cuts to hesitation words and stutters.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Could you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Yes. My name is Guarino.
Mr. Guarino, where do you work?
I work at the Massachusetts State Police at the Norfolk District Attorney's Office.
How long have you worked for the Massachusetts State Police for?
This is year 10 now.
How long have you been assigned to the District Attorney's Office for?
Since November of 2019, so a little 5-ish years, 6 years.
I want to go backwards a little bit. Can you tell me a little bit about what you did before you began working for the Massachusetts State Police?
Yes, sir. I was a Norwood police officer for almost 11 years.
So how long have you been in law enforcement between being a Norwood police officer and a Massachusetts State Police officer?
February this year started my 20th year in law enforcement.
Did you go to school before you became a law enforcement officer?
Yes, I went to Westfield State College, Westfield State University now.
Did you graduate?
Yes, I did.
Can you remember what year you graduated in?
Yes, it was 2003.
Did you have a particular degree from Westfield State?
Yes, I double majored. I got a major in criminal justice and mass communications.
When you began as a police officer with the Norwood Police Department, did you have to go into any type of specific training?
Yes, I went to the police academy.
And how long is the police academy?
6 months.
Generally and briefly, what was taught at the academy?
How to conduct investigations, respond to calls. They did a standard field sobriety testing week, physical training, Massachusetts law and criminal procedure.
When you began as a Norwood police officer, were you a patrol officer?
Yes, I was.
And did you remain a patrol officer for the 10 or 11 years you were there?
Yes, I was also part-time in the detail office. But
what does that mean?
handling jobs when we're off, so filling details like road construction, I'm sorry.
When you left Norwood and began working with the Massachusetts State Police, based on your prior training, did you have to go through further training, or were you ready to just begin?
No, I had to go to the State Police Academy for 6 months.
After you got out of the State Police Academy, were you assigned to a barracks?
Yes, I was assigned to the South Boston Barracks for my training, and then once my break-in training was done, I was assigned to the Holden Barracks near Worcester.
At some point during your time in your career with the Massachusetts State Police, did you start to receive any type of training in the specific field?
I'm sorry.
Did you receive any specialized training at the Massachusetts State Police after the academy?
Once I got into the District Attorney's Office, yes.
And can you tell us a little bit about what type of specialized training you received when you were assigned to the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office?
Yes. So I was hired by the District Attorney's Office. I do cell phone and computer forensics, as well as I'm a sexual assault investigator. I had prior sexual assault investigator school done, and I went for digital forensics classes as part of my daily duties.
In order to work with cell phone forensics, did you have any particular background in it at that point?
I had taken some classes when I was at Norwood PD, but I didn't have any of the Cellbrite or Axiom classes that I do now.
We'll talk about those in a minute so you can give a little more explanation. Did you ever receive a specific advanced degree in data forensics?
No, I didn't.
Did you ever receive any specialized further degree, a master's in data forensics?
No.
So your training came while you were a Massachusetts State Police officer through the Massachusetts State Police?
Yes, that's correct.
What type of courses did you take to learn about forensics?
The first one I took was Cellbrite Certified CCO. DCP is their intro course that teaches you how to use the program and how to extract cell phones using Cellbrite program.
There's a couple words I want you to help us understand.
Yes.
The first is an extraction. What is, as simple as you can, a cell phone extraction?
Yes. Quite literally is plugging the phone into specialized hardware or software, and it pulls the data from that device, make a digital copy of it so that way we can load it up later to look at it.
So when you extract the phone through a download, it basically mimics the content of the phone, but it's in a different shell. It's in a different form than inside the actual phone itself?
Yes, exactly. That way we're not manipulating or changing any data while looking because if we were to open the device, it would change data by going through the phone itself or computer.
When you plug it in, can you explain a little bit about what you're plugging it into?
Yes. So the main program and hardware that we use is GrayKey. It is, again, specialized software and hardware that once the phone's plugged into it, the software is able to extract the information if we have the passcode. If we don't have the passcode and the phone is supported, it's able to guess that passcode depending on how long. Like for an iPhone, if you have a 4-digit, it could take months. If you have a 6-digit, it could take up to 35 years.
So does the phone have to be accessible to actually do that download through GrayKey? Do you have to be able to open the phone with the passcode?
No. So if we don't have the passcode and it's supported, it can guess the passcode without making the phone useless after, say, for an iPhone, I believe it's 10 passcodes.
Is it a quicker process if you do have the passcode?
Much. It would take hours to download the device, depending on how much information's on it.
How do you ensure that the information that you extract from the actual device is accurate and the same when you're making a copy? How do you ensure the integrity of it?
So with GrayKey, it produces a progress report as it goes through its process. There are only 2 fields that we can sort of amend in that PDF that it spits out is the ID number and then the investigator name. So after the data is pulled out, it creates a hash value, which is like a digital fingerprint for that specific information. So if you had gone in and to edit or change it, that digital fingerprint would change. It would change the big long string of numbers that it attaches to that file.
Digital fingerprint, is that the same thing you're referring to as the hash value?
Yes, exactly.
And how do you ensure that the hash value of the product, the copy, is the same as what's on the phone?
You can run the zip file that it creates with the information into a hash calculator, and it will give the same hash as what is produced from the GrayKey PDF report. So if something had changed or there was an error with it, the hash would not be the same as what was given from the PDF. And that's how we know that the data was not the same.
So if you download a phone and it has a hash value, this digital fingerprint, and then someone was to manipulate the phone and remove anything, even a period, from that data, if it's run again, will the hash value change?
Yes, it would not be the same because it will show.
Even if it's just a period?
Yes, any alteration to that initial extraction with that number, it immediately would change.
So if you have an item, a computer or a phone, and you put it through the GrayKey program, and you do an extraction, a copy, where do you store that copy of information if it's not on the phone that you originally have? What do you do with it?
So once the program pulls that information, we have to place it onto our secure server at the office, and we'll take any of the files that were given via the extraction process, and it's saved there for us.
And so you copy it on another link or another digital file?
Yes, we'll save it to the server at the district attorney's office.
Can it be put on a physical item, like a zip drive or a hard drive?
Yes.
If you put that download onto a zip drive or hard drive, how will you know if that information on the hard drive matches the same information you originally downloaded from the phone to the server through GrayKey?
Again, like I said, you could run the hash value of that file again to correlate it with the PDF that we were given once GrayKey has given us the information. So that's how you would know all the information is the same, nothing has changed.
So for example, if you download an iPhone and it has that digital fingerprint, hash value attached to it, and you make a copy or multiple copies, is the way to test whether or not those copies are exactly accurate is to look at the hash value of each copy?
Yes, and copying the zip file would not change the hash value. The only way it would change is if you physically went into it and deleted information somehow.
Now that you have the item, say for example an iPhone, and you've downloaded it through GrayKey, which is hardware and software, and it's on a digital file, can you just open it up and start reading it like a report or a book, or do you have to do something else to it?
No, once it's pulled into that zip file, it has to be opened into another program, which there are many forensic tools, but the ones at the office we use are Cellbrite or Axiom. They're just two brands, and then those programs make that information readable so we can actually look at it.
So if you were to download a forensic copy and you were to open it up without using that subsequent software, would you be able to read or see anything that's on that data?
To be honest, I don't know because I've never opened one of those zip files to know what's actually in them.
After the extraction happens, after that copy made, did you mention there's further software you would use to be able to actually read the data?
Yes, so that's Cellbrite and Axiom. They're two different programs, but those programs will make the information readable.
Are those the programs that you typically use?
Yes, they are. And there's other programs out there, but those are the two that we normally use at the office.
Are they commonly used in the Massachusetts State Police?
Yes, they are.
Are there other programs beyond Axiom and Cellbrite that can be used to decipher the information so you can read it?
Yes, there's many.
In your entire time with the Massachusetts State Police, have you used any other programs other than Axiom or Cellbrite?
To look at cell phones?
Yes.
We have Sanderson forensic software that can look at databases that are in the phone to look at information. I don't normally use those because I don't want to say, I'm probably not proficient enough that I would know this exactly means this, or I wouldn't want to confuse anything that I'm looking at.
When you look at the information after it's been through the extraction and then the analysis through the software, is the data still available if you want to look into the data?
From the zip file itself, sir?
Yes.
Yes, it's always available. It's, like I said, the data in the zip file that Great Key gives us is never changed. It's just being loaded into another program so we can see it. That's all.
The software that you use, whether it's Cellbrite or Axiom, does that do the work for you as a forensic examiner?
Yes. So it runs, as the program runs, I should say, it will bring up different tabs. So it'll say phone calls, chats, photos, the databases, all different things that Cellbrite, their software, has run to pull this information out to make it easier for investigators to find what they're looking for.
On the initial report that you can look at and look for the information, if you wanted to as a data forensic examiner, could you look deeper beyond the production of those software programs?
Yes, you could.
Forensic data analysis, when you look at these tools that provide these initial reports, is that the beginning or does it dig deeper when you're a digital forensic analyst?
No, these reports are finding the low-hanging fruit in the proverbial tree. So it's showing you the stuff that the program is set that most people are looking for. As I said, the phone calls, the chats. If you need to go deeper into it, as I said, there's other software out there where you can pull these databases and try to go through the code to find what you're looking for. Once you find something, you would have to corroborate it with other evidence or data to make sure what you're looking at is exactly what you're looking for.
Have you been involved in the download, extraction, and analyzing data on phones as your role with the Massachusetts State Police?
Yes, that's my primary role in the DA's office currently.
And how many years have you been in that role?
Since November of 2019, so 5 years now.
Have you worked on a number of different cases that involve forensic data?
Yes, I have.
Is there a routine or a practice in your present role when you make a copy about what process you use and how you produce it in a case?
I wouldn't say there's a normal process. It's all case dependent. A lot of cases we get, people want PDFs of the information, portable cases that we can create. So it's basically the portable program that I'm using. That way someone could find the information they're looking for, or I give the raw information if requested.
What's the difference between PDF form and raw information?
So Cellbrite can create a PDF form of every bit of information in the phone. It could be like a 10,000 page PDF. It literally just lists everything that's in there. If I create a portable case, as I said, that is basically like me giving you the thumb drive and it's showing you exactly what I'm seeing, and you can click on the tabs yourself from your own computer. And then if I give the raw file, that means someone has to go in and load it themselves to look for it. Typically,
when you are producing evidence of discovery in a case, do you produce PDF or the raw file?
As I said, it's all case dependent. Not all cases have forensic experts to come in to look at the information. So I'll supply whatever is requested. Normally the PDF or the portable case is what I give, but if more is requested, that's readily available.
And so the raw data, if requested, do you provide that as well?
Yes, if requested.
In this case, were you involved in any type of forensic data extraction?
Yes, I did the extractions of multiple phones and and analyzed multiple phones in this case.
You mentioned that there's a software and hardware, the gray key unit. Where's that located?
That's located in the Digital Forensics Laboratory, which is keycard access and alarmed. At the Norfolk DA's office.
Are there other cases or the multiple cases that are occurring at the same time?
Yes, we constantly have phones coming in and out and being worked on.
What if you have a phone and the gray key unit's being used? What do you need to do?
We need to wait for that phone to finish, because if we unplugged it, it would interrupt that data transfer and we could lose it. So we wait until the phone's done and then the next phone goes up.
Did you become involved in some way in this case?
Downloading devices, sir?
Well, I'm asking generally for...
Oh, yes, sorry, yes.
Were you involved in investigating this case as far as speaking to witnesses or going to the scene?
No.
Can you describe the best you can what your role was relative to this case?
Yes, so I was brought, as I said, phones from this case to have the data extracted and then have it ready in our Celebrate program for the investigators to look at.
At some point, were you provided a phone that you later identified as a phone belonging to Mr. John O'Keefe?
Yes, I was.
Do you remember when you were provided that phone?
Yes, it would be January 29th, 2022, about 7:30 p.m. that night.
Do you remember where you received that phone from?
Yes, I was at the DA's office. I got it from Sergeant Buchanan and Michael Proctor.
Do you remember about what time of night that was?
As I said, about 7 to 7:30 p.m.
Thank you. When you received that phone, did you have the passcode?
No, we didn't.
Without the passcode, what were your next steps?
So the phone was placed in our digital forensics lab until we could get the passcode. I was told that a family member was going to be bringing it in so we could download the device.
Did you ultimately get that passcode?
Yes, we did.
And do you remember when you received it?
January 31st, 2022.
After you received the passcode for Mr. O'Keefe's phone, can you walk us through the process of what you did?
Yep. So once the passcode's obtained, we'll unlock the phone and then plug it into GrayKey, and then it's able to pull the full information from it without having to guess the passcode.
How long does that take?
Again, depending on the size of the phone, a few hours.
After the information was downloaded, then what happened?
We'd place on our digital evidence server at the DA's office, and then if the phone is evidence, it would go into evidence. If it was a consent, we'd give it back to the person who gave it to us immediately.
Did this phone go into evidence?
Yes, it did.
When you downloaded the information through GrayKey, which you said was the hardware and software, does it produce a report with that digital imprint?
Yes, it does. It produces a report from the time you plug it in to the process it completes, and then the amount of data, and then, like I said, that digital fingerprint hash value at the end.
And did you do that with this phone, Mr. O'Keefe's
Yes.
phone?
Yes.
Highlight. I'm going to show you a document, sir.
Okay, sorry. Yes, thank you.
I'm sorry.
Did you show it to Mr. Alessi?
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm showing you a document. Look at both pages, please. Do you recognize that document?
Yes, this is the
What is it?
it's the GrayKey progress report that they give once the phone extractions are completed.
Do you recognize that as the report that is attributed to John O'Keefe's phone?
Yes.
And does that document have that digital imprint, the digital fingerprint that you were talking about?
Yes. So it's in, yeah. So it's here on the back. I just want to see if it was in two places, but it would be here for the, sorry, it's got cut off, but,
Why don't I press-
okay.
I'll ask you some questions.
Okay.
I'd like to-
18th of March?
May I show that exhibit to the jury? May I approach the witness to show him the pointer?
Yes.
On this, top button will be the pointer, the middle button will change the screen, so.
Oh.
Top button, please. Can you walk us through what this report means?
Yep. So here at the top, again, it says GrayKey progress report, and then it gives the report generation, date and time, and it is in UTC, which is the exact definition of universal time coordinates, I believe. So you'd have to minus 4 or 5 hours depending on daylight savings time. So this one would have been raised -5. 16/10 will be 1 noon, 12 o'clock for the actual time on the 31st. As we go down, device name is Johnny. The software version is the Apple iOS that was running at the time. Model number, iPhone 11. And then If you were to look up, the N104AP is also a model number. Unique device ID. This one is what Gray Key assigns to the zip file that it creates. Serial number of the phone, unique chip ID, the Wi-Fi address, the Bluetooth address, and then the phone number. And then there's more information underneath.
Could we scroll that, please? Thank you.
This here is the IMEI, which is the International Mobile Equipment Identifier. It's not uncommon now to have multiple of those identifying numbers. The data partition size of the device, which is 83 gigabytes. The lock state, if the phone was locked, it would say locked. This one is unlocked, so we had the passcode. This was the Gray Key agent version for the software. And then this is the last time that the phone was backed up via iTunes or iCloud. This is the owner's name. You can have anything in this, but his phone had John O'Keefe set as the iPhone owner name, and then the different accounts attributed to the phone.
Okay. Can you show us where the digital fingerprint is?
Yep, it's down. So that the top part here is literally every time when it's plugged in to every process that it completes until the progress report is generated. Here, this is the full file system was created on this date and time. And then even though the partition size was 82 gigabytes, it actually pulled 125 gigabytes of data. Underneath this, if you're on the next page, is that unique fingerprint right here. So it has two, a SHA-256 and an MD5. They're just two versions of hashing to show that the file, a unique fingerprint, and that's what these numbers are here. So there's one for the image of the extraction, and then one for the keychain for the other documents that Gray Key creates.
And you mentioned that if anything has changed, even a period, that number and letter sequence will change as well?
Yes, that's exactly right.
Did you have an opportunity to download and extract any other phones?
Yes.
At some point, did you have an opportunity to download and extract a phone from the defendant?
Yes, I did.
Do you remember when you received that phone?
I got the phone the same time as I got Mr. O'Keefe's phone on the 29th at around 7:30 at night.
And so you received both phones at the same time?
Yes.
From the same people?
Correct.
Trooper Buchanan?
Yes.
Trooper Proctor?
Yes.
What did you do with that phone?
Again, that was brought down to the digital forensics lab for holding until we could get into it, or a warrant was written, or whatever legal process was going to be done, so we could get that information.
Do you secure it?
Yes, that room is locked with keycard access that only myself and two others have, and it's also alarmed.
Do the case officers or investigators that aren't part of your unit have access to those items?
No, the only ones that had access were myself, Trooper Connor Keefe, and then the director, Samantha Vogt. She's a civilian that runs our lab.
Okay. And at that point, were you able, after there was process, were you able to get into the phone at first?
No, it wasn't supported by Gray Key, the phone model and number.
What do you mean it wasn't supported?
So the software, even if we had a search warrant, we plugged it in, Gray Key wouldn't be able to recognize it because it just wasn't supported at that time.
When you say it wasn't supported, does this have anything to do with a passcode?
For both. So we didn't have the passcode. So because we didn't have it, it wasn't supported for us to download that information from the device.
If you had a passcode, would it have been supported?
Yes, it would have been.
So is there a process when you have a phone that you don't have a passcode for to be able to access the content of the phone?
Yes, that's correct. We have to wait until either have the passcode or the software and hardware is supported for the device where it can try to guess the passcode.
So let me ask you some questions about software. In forensic data analysis, does software change frequently?
Constantly.
When the software changes, does it advance?
Does the software get better?
Yes.
Everything? Yes, it does.
At the time you first had the defendant's phone, the software you had was unable to access the contents?
That is correct.
What do? Do you look for other software or do you wait for updates? What's the process?
If there is another software out there, we will use it to try to get the information. If not, we are at the mercy of waiting for the developers to come up with the information for us.
Did you wait in this case?
Yes, we did. We had to wait.
Ultimately, did software advance so that without a passcode you were able to access?
Yes.
How long did you have to wait before you were able to access?
It was July of 2022 that the software had been upgraded enough that it was able to brute force or guess her passcode for the device.
And where does the device remain until you're ready to try again?
In that locked digital forensics lab.
So when the software updates and advances, do you know that it will be successful, or you plug it in and you try?
No. So on Gray Key, they have like a link where you can click and it brings up a whole matrix. So it shows every make, model of phone and then the software associated with it. And it says it can do a partial download, a full download, a password guess. And it tells us. So when there's a new update, we'll check that to make sure that the devices we have can be accessed.
Did you make an attempt to have the software access the phone without a passcode? Thank you. Did you use software inevitably to open the defendant's phone?
Yes.
And how many times did you download?
So there were 2 downloads. One of the partial part of the phone, and then the same time that we had it plugged in, we had the password brute force guess software installed onto the phone, so we would try to guess the passcode. So there were 2 downloads, one with very limited data, and then one with the full file system extraction, which is everything on the phone that it can get.
May I approach?
Yes.
I'm going to show you 2 documents, sir. I'm going to show you 2 documents that actually look at the first one. Do you recognize that document?
Yes, I do.
Is that a result summary from Gray Key for a search of the defendant's phone?
This is the initial extraction that we created before the password guess process went through.
I'd like to introduce this as the next exhibit, please.
No objection, Your Honor.
That's the original.
Yes, this is the first one.
Thank you. I showed you a second document. Do you recognize that?
Yes, this is essentially the same information, except it goes further of all the password guess attempts longer until we actually get all of the information from the phone.
I'd like to introduce this as the next exhibit, please.
Right. No objection, Mr. Leslie?
No objection, Your Honor.
20, so marked.
Could I have the previous exhibit as well, please? Sir, I'm handing you back Exhibit 19, which was the partial download.
Okay.
Exhibit 20, which was the subsequent download. You mentioned hash value changes with the content of each download.
Yes.
Is there hash values specifically assigned to each download?
Yes, there is.
Are they the same number and digits in digital fingerprint?
No, they're not.
And explain again why they would be different.
Again, the first one was the partial. It was only 45 gigabytes of data, so it has one number. The second download was 109 gigabytes of data once it got the passcode. And again, that number is completely different again. And again, like I said, the information is not the same, so the hash values won't be the same.
Were there 2 other phones that you inevitably analyzed?
Yes, there were.
Let's start with the first one. Did you have an opportunity to create a file on a phone that came from Kerry Roberts?
Yes, I did.
Now, you said it's a 2-step process. First is the extraction, the copying, and then it's creating the file.
That's exactly right.
With Kerry Roberts' phone, did you make the extraction? Did you plug it into the Gray Key?
No, I didn't.
Who did?
Trooper Connor Keefe.
How do you know Trooper Connor Keefe?
He went to meet with Kerry Roberts, received the device from her. He brought it back to the office and did the extraction. His name is also on the extraction Gray Key progress reports as well. And he wrote 2 state police reports regarding it.
Do you work with Connor Keefe?
Yes.
He works with, I'm sorry?
Yeah, I would say we do essentially the same job working together.
So he's in your unit,
Yes, he is.
in the digital forensic unit.
That's correct.
That phone, did it come with any paperwork, any forms?
Yes, he had 2 signed waivers of consent from both parties for each device, one for each device.
And so as far as the copying, extraction, you did not do the extraction on Kerry Roberts' phone?
No, I did not.
After it was plugged in and a copy was made, did you then access it?
Once down the road.
Were you assigned at that point to analyze or look at any of the data on that phone?
Initially, no.
At some point, did you create a file so that you could provide it to the parties?
Yes, I did.
Was that upon request?
Yes, it was.
And separately, did you know, or did you ask it a different way? Was a phone from Jennifer McCabe extracted?
Yes, it was.
Did you do the extraction?
No, I did not.
Was the information, after extracted, again provided to a digital file?
It would have been, yes.
Did you, at some point later, did you make a copy to provide to the parties?
Yes, I did.
Can you tell us what a USEF reader is?
So the UFED reader is a portable case that I can create through Cellbrite. Again, like I said, it's the exact same program that I would be viewing if I was sitting at my desktop, and said it can be made into a thumb drive to give to defense, prosecution, investigators, whoever. And there's no chance for the data to be manipulated because it's just a reader.
When you have the digital file that's been extracted and then created into a PDF or a form that can be read, can you print the entire file on paper if you'd like?
Yes, you could.
Would that include, could you print it so it includes the entire content of the phone?
Yes, it would be thousands of pages, but yes, you could.
Is there any way to isolate particular things of interest that you might want? For example, if you wanted just the chats between two people, is there a way that you could have a program isolate just those chats and then give you all of them in a form that you could read?
Yes, so you can go in to cherry pick whatever information you're looking for to create into PDFs or other, it gives 5, I think, different mediums you can have it output: HTML, portable cases, XML files.
If you wanted to create a document that had a number of people in communications, could you do that as well?
Yes, you could.
So you can pretty much set the parameters how you want if you want to search for particular items.
Yes, it's very generous that way of being able to search for keywords, phone numbers, whatever it is, and then you can export that out into a PDF so you can print it.
May I have a moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
Okay. Did you go through the program and create a number of documents that isolated specific information that you wanted?
Yes.
For example, did you go through and create a report for all of John O'Keefe's calls for a period of time?
Yes, I did.
Did you go through the program and create a report for all of the calls between John O'Keefe and the defendant for a period of time?
Yes, I did.
Did you go through the program and create a specific document that would show just the text messages between John O'Keefe and the defendant?
Yes, I did.
Did you go through the phone and create specific separate documents for communications, phone calls, and text messages between Mr. O'Keefe and other people, not the defendant?
Yes.
For example, Ms. Roberts,
Yes, that's correct.
Ms. McCabe. Did you go through any of the phones and create documents to show any text or conversation between parties not involving John O'Keefe?
If directed, I could, but I don't believe I did.
When you took on the task of creating these documents, was it something you did on your own or something that you would wait for a request from a prosecutor or another officer?
I would wait for a request. Again, my knowledge of most of the cases is very, very limited. So if they're looking for something specific, I can assist them. If they need some type of help, I can assist them. But normally I will open it up for them, and they have a better knowledge of the case, so they know what they're going to be looking for. Everyone in our office is Cellbrite trained, or if someone new comes in, that's the first thing they'll go to is to a Cellbrite training, so they know how to use this program, and it doesn't put the burden on myself and Trooper Keefe to try to find everything for every case.
Thank you. Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to conclude this witness's testimony to be recalled again.
You're in agreement with that, Mr. Lessie?
We are, Your Honor, subject to the recall.
Okay.
All right, Trooper, you're all set.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Sure, you can have a seat. I'll remind you you're still in your room.
Or stand, however you're most comfortable today. Just do whatever you need to do, okay?
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, everyone.
Sir, yesterday we talked about downloading phones and making what you called extractions.
Yes.
And from that data, you could create different types of reports.
So have Detective Guarino say his name again, please.
I'm sorry. Again, for the record, could you introduce yourself to the jury and spell your last name for the record?
Yeah. Good morning. My name is Nicholas Guarino, Guarino.
Thank you.
Sir, you mentioned yesterday that you downloaded a number of phones, or you were involved in the process of downloading a number of phones.
That's correct.
You explained to us that after you have the data analyzed, you can pinpoint certain items that you may want to put in a document.
Yes, so the extractions into a program of our choosing, Cellbrite is the most commonly used, and then we can take call logs or text messages, any information that the investigator is looking for.
When you downloaded Mr. O'Keefe's phone and you downloaded the defendant's phone, did you try to create, or did you create a report through Cellbrite, the software, that would show you all of Mr. O'Keefe's call logs?
Yes, I did.
And when I use the term call logs, what does that mean?
The call logs are the calls that the phone receives.
How do you create a report from Cellbrite? Can you just walk us through that process briefly?
Yep. So in the program, you can go in and select the calls from it and export it into different formats: PDF, XML, HTML, or you can create a portable case and extract them all as a portable case that we would see on my computer.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Showing you a document of Mr. O'Keefe's call logs. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
And what is it?
It is the call logs. Just want to make sure it's between John O'Keefe and the defendant from, so let's see the dates, the 28th, January 28th, 2022 to January 29th, 2022.
Would this contain all the phone calls from his phone data for the calls between those two parties that night?
Yes, that's what I created.
I'd like to move this as an exhibit, please.
Okay.
You captured all of the phone calls between two parties on that last document. Can you also do that with chats?
Yes, that is true.
And did you do that in this case?
Yes, I did.
Did you create a document of chats between the phones of the defendant and Mr. O'Keefe for after midnight, for the evening hours of January 29, 2002?
Yes, I did.
May I approach?
Yes.
I'm good. You recognize that document, sir?
Yes, I do.
And can you tell us what that is?
These are the texts from the defendant to John O'Keefe. Yes.
January 29, 2022?
Yes, that's correct. I'm sorry.
Okay. I'd move this as an exhibit, Your Honor.
Okay.
No objection, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Did you identify or specify chat messages between John O'Keefe and a person named Jen McCabe?
Yes, I did.
Did you create a Cellbrite report?
Yes, I did.
May I approach?
Yes. It's sidebar?
No.
Just the two of them?
Compare that what we have.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Right.
Sir, I'm handing you a document. Do you recognize it?
Yes. This is the text messages between John O'Keefe and Jen McCabe on 29th to January 29th, 2022.
And this is through a search of Cellbrite. You matched their data. Similarly to the chats, did you do the same with calls between Mr. O'Keefe and Ms. McCabe?
Yes, I did.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Showing you a document, sir. Do you recognize that document?
Yes, this is the call log between John O'Keefe and Jen McCabe for, make sure I get all the dates correct, just for January 29th, 2022.
Do you have evidence, Your Honor?
Okay.
No objection, Your Honor.
26.
Did you do a file extraction and a report on all chats between the phones of John O'Keefe and the defendant for a period of time?
Yes, I did.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Handing you a document. Do you recognize that document?
Yes, this is the text messages between John O'Keefe and the defendant from January 28th to January 29th, 2022.
All right, move this into evidence.
Okay. Mr. Lessie?
No objection, Your Honor.
All right.
Did you have an opportunity to make a report from some of the data from the defendant's phone from January 29, 2022?
What are you referring? I did make some reports from the defendant's phone.
What's a call log report?
Again, the call log report is the calls that the party makes to another phone. So it's going to show everyone they've called or attempted to call.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Sir, I'm going to ask you to take a look at this document. Do you recognize it?
Yes.
And could you tell the jury what it is?
It's the call log from the defendant's phone for January 29th, 2022. It looks like everyone she called.
No objection, Your Honor.
Thank you.
What we just introduced into evidence is the entire call log of calls to anybody and everybody to and from for that period of time.
Yes.
That's fair to say?
Yes, that's correct.
And then can you further isolate calls between just two parties?
Yes, you can. You can search by phone number or name.
And did you do that with the defendant's records for some parties?
Yes, I did.
Did you isolate phone calls between the defendant and Ms. McCabe for the evening of January 29, 2022?
Yes, I did.
May I approach?
Yes.
Guys, take a look at this document. Do you recognize it?
Yes, I do.
What is it?
It's the phone calls from the defendant and Jennifer McCabe, January 29th, 2022.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to move this into evidence, please.
No objection, Your Honor.
All right, thank you.
29.
Did you isolate calls between the defendant and Ms. Roberts for the night of January 29, 22?
Yes, I did.
Can I see the last exhibit, please? Thank you, sir. I'd ask you to take a look at that document. Do you recognize it?
Yes, I do.
Could you share with the jury what it is?
Yep. It's the call logs between the defendant and Carrie Roberts for January 29th, 2022. Yes.
And that's a report you created.
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, I move this into evidence, please.
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you.
30.
Did you have an opportunity to isolate and produce a report for all chats between the defendant and Ms. Roberts for the night of January 29, 2022?
Yes, I did.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Sir, I'm handing you a document. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
And could you share with the jury what that is?
This is text messages between the defendant and Carrie Roberts on January 29th, 2022.
Okay. Jurors, this is the way we have to put evidence in cases in Massachusetts, okay?
Sir, do you have an opportunity to identify a text message or a chat between the defendant and a person by the name of Ingrid on the morning of January 29th, 2022?
Yes, I did.
May I approach?
Yes.
Take a look at this document. Do you recognize it?
Yes. Yes, this is a text conversation between the defendant and looks like a group chat between Ingrid Curtis and Bill Curtis.
Did you make that report?
Yes, this is on January 29, 2022.
Thank you. And move this into evidence, please.
No objection, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Exhibit 32.
If this is a good time, if Your Honor would permit.
Okay.
Jurors, what we're going to do is we will take our morning recess now. We'll take 20 minutes to a half an hour. We'll see you then.
Good afternoon. Just a few more items I'd like you to recognize. Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
Showing you an envelope. Do you know what's in that envelope?
Yes, it's the raw data extraction of John O'Keefe's cell phone.
Your Honor, I'd ask it to be marked simply for identification, please.
Okay.
Exhibit A.
Thank you.
Trooper, you shared with us that you downloaded the extraction of the phones that you identified and you made reports based on specific identified features. For example, a conversation between two people.
Yes, well, I didn't do the extraction of Jen's phone, but I made those reports with the PDFs from the data extraction.
Relative to Mr. O'Keefe and the defendant's phones, you created a document that provided us the phone calls between them on January 29th?
Yes, that's correct.
And separately, you also provided a document that included all of the chats or text messages between John O'Keefe and the defendant on January 29, 2022.
Yes, it also included the 28th.
Thank you.
Yes.
And in that compilation, did you put together or do you create or review a PowerPoint of those?
Yes, I did.
And what was the point of that?
Just to show the texts and calls in a chronological order, because that way you're not looking at two different documents trying to compare and contrast the calls to text messages when each is coming in.
And did you begin that PowerPoint presentation with a call at 2:16:10 on January 28, 2022?
Yes, that's correct.
And are there additional chats or text messages earlier that morning?
Yes, there's a handful starting around 9:45 a.m.
May I
Yes.
approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Handing you a folder, sir. Could you take a look at it? Let us know if you recognize what's in it.
Yes. So this is the bulk of this is the PowerPoint calls and text messages, and at the beginning there's the messages from before 2:16 in the morning.
Exhibit 33.
For permission, I'd ask the witness to read the text messages from the morning hours, and then we'll begin the PowerPoint presentation.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Do you have a hard copy of those for me?
It was provided. I'll see if we have another copy if you don't have it.
All right, I have, it's in here, the pre-morning hours, the ones that we discussed at Sidebar. If you don't have them,
The defendant, Madam. I'm sorry.
thank you, Ms. Little.
Okay, thank you.
May we begin, Your Honor?
Please.
Could you first read the text messages from that morning to the jury?
Yes. Apologize if I misspelled things or state things. Start time. All right. It's a little different than the format I had before. All right. This is from Karen Reed to John O'Keefe. You have really hurt me this time. This was sent at 9:49:20 a.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant. I'm sorry, this has been an issue with me for 8 years. It physically hurts me to see everyone else in their life do things for them, and I'm forced to always be the bad guy. This was sent at 10:02:56 a.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe. I'm not the same as everyone else. Most of the time I try to do what is healthy/smart for them. More importantly, I try to support you in what you need. You just lashed out at me and said terrible things. I don't know how you've gotten to this point with me when I'm just trying my hardest. You made your point and continue to beat me down. I have a lot going on too. Physically, I am falling apart and trying to get answers and help. 10:09:49 a.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe. I am just your girlfriend. I am not a perfect parent. I am trying very hard and sometimes treat them nothing like I used to. 10:46 a.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant. I know. I'm sorry for lashing out. I'm just hurting and struggle daily with them. Always feel like I'm failing at this parenting thing. I wasn't built for this. 10:12 a.m. on the 28th. Defendant to John O'Keefe. Kaylee isn't perfect, but everything wonderful about her is because of you. 12:36 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, an emoji is sent at 12:21:59 on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe. It's true, I know she's her mother's daughter, but she wouldn't be so bright and successful if she lived with anyone else. 12:22:51 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe. Wow, Kristen just sent 2 back-to-back messages to not lose your faith in the kids. 12:31:28 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, or in yourself, at 12:31:41 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, there's 2 emojis sent at 12:32:06 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, no, and there's 2 emojis. Life can pick you up sometimes. Please be happy with them and put away your frustrations for the rest of the day. And be so proud of yourself, JJ. That's 12:33:35 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, that's what bothers me more than anything. Should have sent Peg's or Sarah's W-2s. We are all equal guardians. 1:18:21 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, maybe you can call someone. 1:21:55 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, like who? 1:46:42 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, what time are you coming here? 1:47:38 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, it's another emoji sent, 2:05:30 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, I don't know what time, feel kind of out of it, just trying to clear my head, 2:06:07 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, he writes, okay, 2:06:25 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, text me when you guys settle in later, 2:06:44 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, sure, 2:06:58 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to, oh, and it's cut off here, sir.
Yeah. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
That must be where the, I believe it goes to the next one, so I'll start. Yeah, I'm sorry.
With the court's permission, we'll begin the PowerPoint.
Yes.
Okay, phone calls, text messages, and then we'll start with the first slide. So it's from the defendant to John O'Keefe. I feel pretty shitty about how this morning went down. I know you said sorry, but it really stung, especially when I've been trying pretty hard lately. I feel like a loser turning around, just coming back over after everything you said. 2:16:10 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, not sure what you want me to do. I said I'm sorry and I was out of line. If you prefer to stay home, I totally get it. 2:17:16 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, things in my own life have been difficult too, you know. 2:17:33 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, I know. 2:17:40 p.m. on the 28th. At 2:17:45 p.m., the defendant calls John. The phone call is answered and they speak for 2 minutes, 22 seconds. 2:23:02 p.m., the defendant calls John. That's again answered at 10, and they speak for 1 minute, 2 seconds. At 2:24:17 p.m., the defendant calls John, and the call is rejected. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, tell me if you're interested in someone else. Can't think of any other reason you've been like this. 2:25:18 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, nope. 2:25:33 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, things haven't been great between us for a while. Ever consider that? 2:26:03 p.m. on the 28th. At 2:28:40 p.m., the defendant calls John. That call is rejected.
Mr. Guarino, can you explain to us the difference between not answered and rejected?
Yes, so if the call is not answered, that means the call rang out and goes to voicemail. If the call is rejected, that is someone actively hitting the send to voicemail button to disable the call to stop it from ringing. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, kids are here, not in the mood to talk. 2:29:03 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, so you're not into it anymore. That's fine, but I don't want to keep trying and you keep treating me like this. 2:29:12 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, I'm trying to hug and kiss you this morning and you whacked me in the face with a pillow. 2:29:59 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, last night you're basically like, yeah, what about when we talk about the future? So why don't you just admit you're not into so much anymore? 2:30:23 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, not how it went down, but okay. 2:30:26 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, can you please admit your head is out of the game with us? 2:30:52 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, sick of always arguing and fighting. It's been weekly for several months now. So yeah, I'm not as quick to jump back into being lovey-dovey as you apparently. 2:32:28 p.m. on the 28th. At 2:32:47 p.m., the defendant calls John. That call is rejected. John O'Keefe to the defendant, G, stop calling. 2:32:54 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, then why would you start with me this morning? 2:32:58 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, you're setting me up to fail. 2:33:05 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, you started a number of fights from your end. 2:33:26 p.m. on the 28th. And John O'Keefe to the defendant, I've explained it a few times already, not doing it again. 2:33:31 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, so you're not into this anymore. 2:33:41 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, not into fighting all the time, correct. 2:34:03 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, if you tell me you're interested in someone else, you will never hear from me again. You can have all the space in the world. 2:34:11 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, he sends an emoji. 2:34:19 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, then stop starting with me. 2:34:20 p.m. on the 28th. 2:34:29 p.m. the defendant calls John. He rejects the call. John O'Keefe to the defendant, I'm not answering. Stop calling. 2:34:42 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, can you please answer after how you treated me earlier? 2:34:43 p.m. on the 28th. 2:34:54 p.m. the defendant calls John. That's rejected. John O'Keefe to the defendant, Kaylee is right here. 2:35:02 p.m. on the 28th. The defendant to John O'Keefe, you start a rager with me out of nowhere and then tell me you're sick of fighting with me. 2:35:41 p.m. on the 28th. The defendant to John O'Keefe, I'm going to grab a drink in a bit. 2:38:14 p.m. on the 28th. 2:38:42 p.m. the defendant calls John. That call is rejected. The defendant to John O'Keefe, can you please answer? 2:38:52 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, no Karen, not sure why you need to announce that you're going, not sure why you need to announce that you're grabbing a drink, but have fun. 2:39:46 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, seeing if you want to meet me later. 2:40:22 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, can you please call me? 2:40:32 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, have to take them to the doctor. He has practice. 2:40:55 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, yeah, 5 minutes. 2:41:17 p.m. on the 28th. At 2:43:01 p.m., the defendant calls John. It's not answered. At 2:43:45 p.m., the defendant calls John. The call is rejected. John O'Keefe to the defendant, my father just walked in. 2:43:58 p.m. on the 28th. The defendant to John O'Keefe, okay, can you please call me for 2 minutes? 2:44:14 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, not right now. 2:44:23 p.m. on the 28th. The defendant to John O'Keefe, I'm there when anyone else needs me. 2:44:26 p.m. on the 28th. At 2:45:32 p.m., the defendant calls John. Call is rejected. The defendant calls Mr. O'Keefe. Yes, John, you gave me utter grief this morning. I'd like you to call me for a minute. 2:46:16 p.m. on the 28th. The defendant to John O'Keefe, I've been trying to get over the hump with is arguing, and now you tell me you're not into doing things, and you don't want to fight weekly, but fly off the handle at 8 a.m. with me, like you're setting me up to fail. 2:47:08 p.m. on the 28th. Defendant to John O'Keefe, I've been dealing with my own personal crisis over things I have zero control over. I'd like to lean on you too sometimes. Instead, I just hear everything I've done wrong. 2:48:34 p.m. on the 28th. At 2:56 p.m., the defendant calls John. The call is rejected. At 2:51:13 p.m., the defendant calls John. It's rejected. 2:52:37 p.m., John calls the defendant. Not answered. At 2:53:56, the defendant calls John. Again, not answered. The defendant, John O'Keefe, you seriously cannot pick up the phone for 2 seconds. 2:54:13 p.m. 2:58:05 p.m., the defendant calls John. It's rejected. At 2:59:13, John calls the defendant. The call is answered and they speak for 4 minutes, 59 seconds. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, why don't you meet me at Hillside at 4:30/5, 3:08:55 p.m. John O'Keefe to the defendant sends an emoji, 3:10:08 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, or whenever you get everyone settled, 3:10:35 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, like I said, doctor now, and he has practice till 6. If you want to go start drinking, then go for it. 3:36:21 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, I didn't know the times of his practice. 3:36:40 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, I just want to give you space at the house without me there. So rather meet you out than meet at the house. 3:37:01 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, yeah, well now there's a 72-year-old taking up shop on my couch. 3:37:36 p.m. on the 28th. Defendant to John O'Keefe, yeah, that too. 3:37:46 p.m. 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, is he going to Collins? 3:38:23 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, not tonight. 3:38:32 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, so do you plan on going out tonight? 3:39:01 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, Karen, I don't know. 3:39:17 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, you're like jonesing to drink, so go. 3:39:43 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, okay, well after how this morning went down, I don't think I need to be back over there with you. Get frustrated at how I am with the kids. Has nothing to do with drinking. 3:40 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, I am paranoid now that everything I do with them is problematic. So rather see you for a minute without it, kids around. 3:40:24 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, what's your plan? At 4:47:16 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, don't have one. 4:50:09 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, so still home. 4:50:26 p.m. on the 28th. The defendant to John O'Keefe, yes. 4:45 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, we just got home, waiting to see what Papa decides here, or else I have to get Patrick at 6. 4:59:45 p.m. on the 28th. Defendant John O'Keefe, okay. 5:01:55 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, so are you staying home or coming here? 5:02:23 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, waiting to see what you end up doing. I don't want to hang out at the house too much, like I said. 5:03:40 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, I think it's clear me around with the kids around is slowly killing our relationship, and our relationship is much more important to me. 5:04:16 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, well, there's a blizzard coming, so we'll be inside all weekend. 5:04:19 p.m. on the 28th. The defendant to John O'Keefe, it will be over by noon tomorrow. 5:04:44 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, don't think so. 5:05:27 p.m. on the 28th. Defendant to John O'Keefe, I don't want to keep having this constant conflict of the dynamic of the four of us. The harder I try, the more it kills our relationship as a couple. It feels like utter shit to be in that position. Rather just meet you out for drinks when you figure out what your night looks like. 5:06:45 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, well, I have no idea what's going on, so do what you want. 5:07:34 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, need to figure out what everyone here is doing. All I know now is Madeline is coming over. No clue about Patrick yet, or if Papa is planning on hanging it for a few more hours. 5:09:29 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, okay, well, when you know the story, and if you want me to come up, let me know. 5:12:36 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, no, Karen, you decide what you want to do. 5:13:18 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, I know your heart isn't in this anymore, I felt it for a while, and especially lately. I'm willing to try more, but not if you approaching the point of indifference. If you want me to come up and you can head out for a while, then say so when you know what your father is doing. 5:14:23 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, you come up and I head out, really? Emoji. 5:15:48. John O'Keefe to the defendant, I've told you already, I don't bounce back as quickly as you do after we have a battle. 5:16:52 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, no, head out together with an emoji. 5:17:49 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, or meet out. 5:17:54 on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, gonna send Patrick to Collins tonight. They're picking him up around 7. Mike may hang out too when he brings Matt over. So why don't you just come over? 5:19:42 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, Mike doesn't want to go out for a bit. 5:20:20 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, I would like to, been a shit day from the jump. 5:20:33 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, probably 5:20:39 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, I just got sober an hour ago. 5:20:56 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, I'll text you, hang with Mike for a few. I don't need to butt in. Text me if/when you think you may head out. 5:25:12 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, can you send me Tim Zoll's contact info, please? 5:26:38 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, I paid the last bill. 5:27:08 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, you didn't have to do that, thanks. 5:27:43 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, are you really not going to accept my friend request? 5:32:33 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, an emoji, on what, FB? 5:33:01 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, yeah, we've been going out for 2 years. 5:33:20 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, I haven't gone on. You defriended me over a year ago, I believe. 5:33:48 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, Kerry texted that they're headed out in a bit. 6:05:29 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, okay. 6:14:55 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, she's going to let me know where. 6:17:51 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, so you're going to meet them. 6:18:12 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, just presenting it as an option. Wouldn't mind hanging out with them for a drink. 6:19 p.m. on the 28th. Sorry. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, is Mike over? 6:27:26 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, yes. 6:29:45 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, sounds you're like good with getting together tonight. 6:31:32 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, was hoping after this morning you'd be interested in smoothing things over with me. 6:32:24 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, told you to come over, but you insisted on meeting me out somewhere. 6:33:44 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, Mike is a little off with me for a while now. I've said that multiple times. 6:34:34 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to Karen, the defendant, time to get over it, Karen. He's fine. He was fine the other night when he came by. 6:38:09 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, yeah, wouldn't mind hanging out with other people, like another female too. 6:39:09 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, where are you meeting them? 6:39:28 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, I don't have plans with them. She just said they're headed out in a bit and will text when they land somewhere. 6:39:52 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, if you want to go out with Mike solo, that's fine. Just let me know. 6:40:17 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, I already told you what you should do. Not going to keep doing this. 6:41:07 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, I asked to let me know if you guys are going to head out. I haven't been out for drinks this week and had a shit week and a shit day. And I dread Kaylee or Pat is going to get chatty with me the second I walk in, and that is going to irritate you. 6:43:21 on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, Pat is leaving. Kay is with Mad Cam. 6:44:02 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant. I'll text Chris then. 6:44 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant. We're headed out shortly. What's your plan, Karen? 7:06:13 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe. Do you want me to join or no? 7:06:37 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant. Yes, wasn't sure if you were meeting the Currans. 7:07:04 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe. They are not out drinking yet. 7:07:40 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe. Where are you headed? 7:09:22 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant. Trying to decide maybe McCarthy's. 7:14:48 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe. Okay, then let me know where you decide. I'm still down in Enfield. 7:21:50 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant. Text me when you leave. Still waiting on McKinney's. 7:22:28 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe. I'm having issues with my hot water, so had to text someone to take a look. 7:24:11 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant. An emoji. You trying to piss me off. 7:25:35 on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant. Hope your plumber buddy that you texted is hot. 7:26:24 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe. Nope, my shower only got lukewarm and now my sink won't run hot at all. The plumber I used is right down the road. 7:26:27 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe. I turned that temp thing in the basement all the way up. 7:26:52 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant. Check the hot water heater and see if it's leaking. 7:26:52 p.m. on the 28th. The defendant to John O'Keefe. It's not. 7:26:59 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant. Don't do that. 7:27:01 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant. Is the pilot lit? 7:27:08 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe. I was trying to get my shower hot. 7:27:12 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe. Yes. 7:27:14 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant. Don't turn it up. Don't turn it all the way up. 7:27:26 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant. It will burn out. 7:27:32 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe. I had this issue twice before and it wasn't a disaster. I just can't remember what the cause was. 7:27:41 on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant. Just turn it back to where it was and get over here. 7:28:08 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe. I don't want to come home in a blizzard and then really be up shit creek. 7:28:53 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant. So you're going home tonight? 7:29:18 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe. Or tomorrow or whenever. I've had a chill all day since my shower. 7:29:45 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant. It's going to snow all day tomorrow. No driving. 7:30:05 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant. We're headed to McCarthy's. 7:41:29 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe. Okay, let me know if you end up leaving. 7:41:57 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant. Why? Now you're not coming. 7:42:27 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe. I'm waiting for the plumber. I actually think he's in the driveway. 7:42:56 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant. We're taking Mike's car, so I'm relying on you for a ride home if he leaves. 7:43:10 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe. He's not going home after. 7:43:27 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant. 8 o'clock on a Friday. Emoji. 7:43:31 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant. He may have to get Michael. 7:43:46 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant. You have a plumber coming over at 8. Knowing me and Papa could have handled it. Good luck. 7:44:36 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe. I have always told you I will not put either of you out of your way the way everyone else in your life does. I knew it wasn't working right when you were at the doctor's with Kaylee, and I knew neither of you could get here. And this guy, Richie, fixed it last time, whatever it was. He was supposed to be here at 5, 7:48:01 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe. If it's not a quick fix, I'll tell him to forget it. 7:48:20 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, if you need a new water heater, don't let him do it. 7:55:04 p.m. on the 28th. Defendant text from the defendant to John O'Keefe. He's here now. If it's not quick, I'm not doing it. I just want to make sure nothing is wrong / will go wrong with when I'm not home. 7:55:44 on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe. He's not a scammer. Half the quick stuff he doesn't even charge me for. 7:56:06 p.m. on the 28th. The defendant to John O'Keefe. He just put the toilet seats on crooked. 7:56:28 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant. Status 8:09:02 p.m. on the 28th. And the defendant to John O'Keefe. Still here with an emoji. 8:09:18 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe. Said he's got to go to HD and probably be back mañana. 8:23:56 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant. So 8:24:43 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, an emoji. 8:25:02 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, just trying to figure out if I need to be here. 8:25:51 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, what does it need? 8:26:01 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, I don't know. He showed me some pieces that was all rusted with an emoji. I don't understand half this stuff. 8:26:42 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant on the water heater. 8:26:59 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, yes. 8:27:08 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, tell him to leave it. I'll take care of it Sunday or Monday. 8:28:30 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, no, it's okay. I can either meet him here or just shut off the alarm. 8:28:52 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, he used to work here while I was at work. 8:29:02 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, does he realize it will be whiteout conditions tomorrow a.m.? 8:29:32 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, yeah, but he lives right down the road. 8:29:47 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, Karen, this storm is going to be intense. Can't drive. 8:30:19 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, okay, well, if he can't, he can't. 8:30:36 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, I'll do it Monday. 8:30:56 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, I better not still have this problem on Monday. 8:31:22 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, you plan on being there. 8:31:43 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, I'd to know I can take a hot shower there here if I need to. 8:32:14 p.m. on the 28th. Figured you'd be, from John O'Keefe to the defendant, figured you'd be in Canton until Monday. 8:32:32 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, I'm getting off my phone. Let me know what you're doing. 8:32:54 p.m. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, I think the four of us together is toxic to this relationship. Would like to limit it. 8:33:16 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, you said so yourself for probably a year now. 8:33:52 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, blizzard tomorrow. Nobody is going anywhere. 8:33:56 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, maybe I'll come back late tonight. Bad snow is in the early a.m. 8:35:14 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, I'll head up there in a few min. Let me know if you leave. 8:35:26 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, emoji, he says sure. 8:35:34 p.m. on the 28th. And that was the last of them.
We're almost done, sir.
And you can feel free to stand.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor.
So that presentation is a compilation of text messages and phone calls between John O'Keefe and the defendant on January 28, 2022.
Yes, that was.
Aside from that compilation, are there other text messages and phone calls that you've reviewed between John O'Keefe and the defendant that evening, January 28, 2002, going into past midnight, January 29, 2022?
Yes, there's more text messages.
And those text messages and phone calls, are they a separate compilation from this?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, at this time, I'd ask us to release Trooper Guarino and recall him at a later date.
Yes. All right. There's no objection, Mr. Alessi, correct?
No objection, subject to the bench.
Yes. All right. Thank you very much, Trooper. We'll see you another time.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Could you please again introduce yourself to the jury, spell your last name for the record?
I'm Trooper Nicholas Guarino, Guarino.
You would explain what an extraction report is.
It's the information in the cell phones. We can create PDFs or portable cases from information, whatever is specified.
An extraction report, can it be general or more narrow?
Yes, it can be.
I want to introduce a few more extraction reports that we didn't get to last time.
Okay.
In this case, did you use Mr. O'Keefe's phone to create an extraction report that included all of his calls from the 28th and the 29th of January 2022?
Yes, I did.
Did you create an extraction report that included a text message between the defendant and Jennifer McCabe?
Yes, I did.
With the court's permission, could Mr. Guarino read this to the jury?
Okay.
It's from Jen McCabe to the defendant.
And what does it say?
Can you send me Carrie's number?
What time and date?
That is 7:26:52 a.m., April 29th, 2022.
Did you do a further extraction report from John O'Keefe's phone with text messages between him and a person named Kaylee?
Yes, I did.
You recognize that?
Yes.
What is it?
It's the text chain between John O'Keefe and Kaylee.
The date?
January 28th, 2022 to January 29th, 2022.
Trooper Guarino, did you have an opportunity to obtain phone calls, voice messages, and text messages from the defendant to Mr. O'Keefe's phone on the evening of January 29th, 2022?
Yes, I was.
Where did you get the phone call records from?
From John O'Keefe's phone.
Where did you get the voicemails from?
Also from John O'Keefe's phone.
Where did you get the text messages from?
From John O'Keefe's phone.
Did you have an opportunity to take those phone calls, the voice messages, and the text messages and put them in a chronological order?
Yes, I did.
Did you include all of the phone calls, all the text messages, and all of the voicemails?
Between John O'Keefe and the defendant, yes.
Did you create a PowerPoint to put them in a chronological order?
Yes.
Showing you a binder, sir. Could you open it up? Tell us what this is.
Yes, this is the phone calls and text messages between the defendant and John O'Keefe, as well as the voicemails. Well,
Is there a package in the front of that binder?
yes, there is.
And what is that package?
It says defendant's voicemails and on 1/29/2022, the USB thumb drive that should have those files on.
Your Honor, I move this binder as the next exhibit. It would include both the PowerPoint presentation as well as a clip of the phone calls.
No objection, Your Honor.
Should, yes. Do you need the thumb drives?
I don't. With the court's permission, I would ask that Trooper Guarino take us through the PowerPoint presentation.
Yes.
Thank you.
Is it okay to begin?
Please.
So these are the phone calls on the 29th. So at 12:33:35 a.m., the defendant calls John. That phone call is not answered. 12:34:09 a.m., the defendant calls John. It's not answered. 12:34:38 a.m., the defendant calls John. It's not answered. 12:35:09 a.m., the defendant calls John. Not answered. 12:35:35, the defendant calls John. It's not answered. 12:36:09 a.m., the defendant calls John. It's not answered.
Trooper Guarino, let me stop you there for a second. Did you look into any internet connection between the defendant's phone and the router and the internet connection at Meadows Ave, John O'Keefe's home that night?
Yes. At 12:36:39 a.m., defendant's phone auto connects to the Wi-Fi PatsFam 123.
Are you familiar with the router at Mr. O'Keefe's home?
I have not done a look at it in person, but that's the known network that's listed under it. There's two, PatsFam 123 and O'Keefe 74.
Did you learn the range that a connection must be in order to connect to his router?
Yes, so depending on the router, it's either a 2.4 gigahertz or a 5 gigahertz radio band, or signal band, I should say. Depending on which one it's connecting to, which band, it's either 150-foot indoor range or up to 300 feet outdoor. So again, when you pull into your home, sometimes you can still be connected to your home Wi-Fi in the driveway.
And again, can you give us the time of the connection between the defendant's phone and Mr. O'Keefe's router at Meadows Ave that night?
Yes, 12:36:39 a.m.
Please continue.
At 12:36:40 a.m., the defendant calls John. It's not answered. At 12:37:08 a.m., the defendant calls John, and voicemail number 1 is left with voice.
Ms. Gilman, would you kindly play the voicemail for 12:37:08?
At 12:38:26 a.m., the defendant calls John. It's not answered. 12:39:03 a.m., the defendant calls John. It's not answered. 12:39:37 a.m., the defendant calls John. It's not answered. 12:40:43 a.m., the defendant calls John. It's not answered. At 12:41:35 a.m., the defendant calls John. Voicemail number 2 is left. Some beeping noises, appears to be a butt dial or accidental call.
Ms. Gilman, could you play the voice message at 12:41:35?
The defendant then texts John O'Keefe at 12:55:31 a.m. on the 29th. I'm going home. The defendant texts John O'Keefe, see you later, at 12:55:50 a.m. on the 29th. At 12:58:19 a.m., the defendant calls John. It's not answered. 12:58:47 a.m., the defendant calls John. It's not answered. 12:59:24 a.m., the defendant calls John. Voicemail number 3 is left with voice.
Ms. Gilman.
John, I'm here with your fucking kids. Nobody knows what the fuck you want, you fucking pervert.
1 a.m. 26 seconds, the defendant calls John. It's not answered. At 1 a.m. 49 seconds, the defendant calls John. Voicemail number 4 is left. It's 1 second called, no sound.
Ms. Gilman.
That was it. The defendant texts John O'Keefe, your kids are cucking alone, at 1:02 a.m. on the 29th. Defendant texts John O'Keefe, I'm back in Mansfield. The kids are home alone. 1:04:14 a.m. on the 29th. At 1:10:17 a.m., the defendant calls John. Voicemail number 5 is left with voice.
Ms. Gilman.
Yeah, it's 1 in the morning. I'm with your fucking niece and nephew. You fucking pervert. You're a fucking pervert.
At 1:10:44 a.m., the defendant calls John. It's not answered. At 1:12:18 a.m., the defendant calls John. It's not answered. 1:12:46 a.m., the defendant calls John. It's not answered. 1:13:13 a.m., the defendant calls John. Not answered. 1:14:11 a.m., the defendant calls John. It's not answered. 1:14:44 a.m., the defendant calls John. Not answered. 1:16:10 a.m., the defendant calls John. Not answered. 1:16:38 a.m., the defendant calls John. Not answered. At 1:17:37 a.m., the defendant calls John. So when voicemail 6 is left with voice.
John, I'm going home. I cannot babysit your niece. I need to go home. You are fucking using me right now. You're fucking another girl. Kim's sleeping next to me. You're a fucking loser. Fuck yourself.
At 1:18:38 a.m., the defendant calls John. Not answered. At 4:38:14 a.m., the defendant calls John. Not answered. 4:38:49 a.m., the defendant calls John. Not answered. 4:39:39 a.m., the defendant calls John. Not answered. 4:40:05 a.m., the defendant calls John. Not answered. 4:42:05 a.m., the defendant calls John. Not answered. 4:42:54 a.m., the defendant calls John. Not answered. 4:45:10 a.m., the defendant calls John. Not answered. 5:04:27 a.m., the defendant calls John. Not answered. 5:21:28 a.m., the defendant calls John. Not answered. 5:21:58 a.m., the defendant calls John. Not answered. 5:23:26 a.m., the defendant calls John. Voicemail number 7 is left with voice. At 5:24:27 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 5:25:28 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 5:26:14 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 5:28:16 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 5:28:43 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 5:29:21 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 5:29:46 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 5:30:15 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 5:30:52 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 5:31:21 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 5:36:29 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 6:03:02 a.m., the defendant calls John, and voicemail number 8 is left with some voice and noise and background.
Yes, I need someone to be 34 beautiful Vietnam with a handcuff notice now. Yeah. Okay, I know. Where's the blanket? I don't see blankets, Terry. Yes, I need something.
If we have the lights on, please. I have no further questions.
Beautiful, beautiful, yes, now, today, and chapter, now. I know. Real blankets. I don't see blankets, Harry. I know, Mom, I'm looking at